Right, that's interior light. So one interior light. I think that lamp is maybe 5 watts. So in total, fuse wise, it's not going to take a lot. Not going to take a lot at all. So we're talking, it's less than half an amp really. I don't think you can get a half amp fuse. And if we use blade fuses, many blades, I'll need to check that and see, but anyway, let's just call that half an amp for talking sake. Fuses. So next one, where are we going to put our next one? Next critical path. This goes for a good old run roundabout. Now, from the same point in the ignition switch, small brown wire comes down here. This is through your indicator stock for your horn. 2 terminals on the horn, goes through, there's your horn there. Now the horn's a little bit of a greedy sod when it comes to current. It can be around about 4 amps. So if we call that our second fuse, horn. Now, horn wise, you can actually, this can actually be plugged in. Where it says H, that terminal is on the back of your stock here, and with the binnacle removed you can actually get access to it. I don't know if we can actually see it there. In fact, you could probably get access without it. Just going to see what colour it is. Should be a small brown one actually. There you go, end's brown, so we're looking for a small brown wire. It's the only one of that colour attached. Doesn't actually seem to give a colour for the horn at the other side. But certainly on the H terminal, we're looking for a small brown wire. Let's see if we can find one. Let's see if we're lucky. And no, we are not. We are indeed not lucky. Because I have a sneaky suspicion that the brown wire is not as it is shown here. I have got a sneaky suspicion that this and this wire head out to the front in the horn and come back through the harness instead. Makes it a little bit difficult, but let's go and have a look. Here we have our horn wires. Again, not the most secure. We can pick through it and we will get up behind the heater dump. And as we can see, we have the purple and black wire and the brown wire for the horn. Now, to fit this here, you're going to have to cut that brown wire and insert that fuse there, same as the brown wire for the interior light. This purple and black wire is the ground return for the horn, so we should see the purple with black wire on the back of the controls and the black wire for the ground at the opposite side. Let's go check. purple and black one side, ground wires the other. Sorted, live all the time. So actually, if you take that away, our horn is actually here. So that's brown wire, and then this one is purple with black to go to the horn and all the way through. So this is where we would have X2. This position is actually which is on right hand front wing valence beneath fiberglass mounting, so that's beneath position A. So that's that one covered. And last but not least, the third permanent live, typically used for side lights. So let us go, let's follow it along. Yep, goes in and loops out of the lighting switch. Comes down. Then heads into the headlamp and flasher dipper switch. So this is where we have a choice. We can either fuse the lighting in its entirety, which means everything supplied off this wire, whether it be main beam, dip beam, side lights, and so on, is actually powered from the one fuse. Or you could add separate fuses in, or as an extreme you can do both. Now this brown wire, unfortunately we will need to also cut it. Insert our fuse in here. That's our third one. Now, lights. Now let's have an approximate guess. I reckon we will be, let's see, for side lights we've got 1, 2 at the front, 2 at the back, roughly 5 watts each. There's 20 watts in lighting, so roughly 2 amps. Main beam, sorry, with dip beam, we're going to have 2, possibly roughly about 40 watts. So that'll be roughly 4 amps each, so totally 8 amps. You can see when it starts to add up now. Main beam, I think it's just actually 46, 47 watts if I remember, or thereabouts. So not much more. We're kind of getting up to sort of your 4 amp range again, and that'll be either or. It's not at the same time. So up there again, so we're looking at 10 amps running. So fuse wise, probably 15 amps. And we want to get it there now. That's in the switch at the other side of the binnacle. And I know from experience, you can see the extra red wire here for the extra gauges is already heading up to that switch. Now 2 options here. You could drop the switch, in which case you will need a small tool to get this out. It's quite crude to take it with a screwdriver. Robert Picton actually machined up some tools for that to come off, which you'll see when I go to use it. Now, I know from experience that that wire is sitting up there, and you can see the two brown wires, if I shine the torch a bit better, that we need to get to in the back of the switch itself. So with the binnacle loose, we'll be able to get into that one no problem, and that will hopefully be our lighting covered. Now, as I mentioned, we then have a choice. What do we want to do with the rest? The rest is not so critical. If we look at, say, main beams, the main beams are shown here and here. That means if I find my other pen, dip beams here and here. Now these only go to the front. We're looking for UR and UW, so blue and white, blue and red. Fortunately, the wire harness only pops through in one place in the front of an amp, which is on your left hand side. And here we have blue with white and blue with red. If you wanted to fuse them individually, blue with white, blue with red, and red is your side lights. So these are actually all in plugs. You could actually put a little fuse box there if you wanted, but if you find the loop for it under either one of these locations, and you see when we go to do it, that's going to be easy enough to do, and more or less a plug-in job. That would mean that if you fuse these at the lower end, which is that's about 4 amps a piece, so if you actually fuse these individually at 5 amps, if any one of them went, the lower fuse would go, and you would still have the rest of your lights. So there's much to be said for that. Side lights, these both come off your other switch, your lighting switch. So again, that would be that protected. So what else have we got? Flashers, I think, next. So flashers, slightly easier. These now come off the switched ignition side, and there are several wires come off of that. One of them is the pawl unit. Don't forget that ground wire for the pawl unit. It needs it, otherwise the coil won't hold on. White wire in your pawl unit is where you would like to place your fuse. Now this coil takes next to no current whatsoever, but being the nature of it is, being the nature of the beast, it's a wound coil. They do heat, there's enamel wires there, the resistance is very, very high to begin with, but if you melt the windings and that starts to come down, that's going to start getting very, very toasty. This wire here, much easier to get to, as it's actually part and parcel of the assembly on the column, which is here. And there's your white wire coming around. So with this loop here, it's very, very easy to cut into it and fit a fuse if you want. I don't think you can get a 1 amp fuse. Might be able to. Certainly 3 amps would be low enough that it wouldn't affect anything else. So that covers our pawl unit. Second one, flasher unit. So that takes care of all of these devices. Now we're going to have two on at the same time. They're both 21 watt lamps, so you're talking 42 amp lamps, which is going to be roughly, again, 4 amps. X4 will be going in here. The pawl, let's just say 3 amp fuse. So looking for that terminal there, white wire onto the actual flasher unit. Again, it's not too onerous to get to. This one here has been replaced, so it's got a clip-on unit. The original roots one are actually just one screw along with the grounds in there, but you can see the white loop there, so you would want to insert the fuses between the loop spade and that spade, and that's it done. Tuck it out of the way. That would be that one done. Third one is at the back of the car. We'll get to that in a minute. And also includes the wiper. So I'll tell you what, let's do the wiper one just now, because the wiper is an interesting one. It comes on when the ignition's on, but the supply itself doesn't go to a switch. It goes to the stabilizer, and the white wire goes to the motor. The switch for your wipers actually switches to ground, so we really want to get the fuse in there now. The current that your wiper motor draws, 6, it's about 6 amps, but it's really going to determine, it's really going to be determined by how much load it's under, how easily it clears the screen, what condition the blades are in. So 10 amp fuse for that, and that one is a very, very easy one to get to. We go back around the car. There we go. Out with this, put a fuse in between it, 10 amps, job's done. Don't need to worry about anything else, that's your wiper done. Now, do we need to fuse the stabilizer? Don't really think so. If we're going to be at the back of the binnacle, I'll show you where this point is anyway, and you can decide that for yourself. As you can see, the other side of the stabilizer is what does all of these bits. Now this is an interesting one. We have one final one. Ignition coil and stop lamps. Now again, that's a very, very easy one to get to. It's the 2 white wires that loop in and out your coil. So we'll be taking one of these, which is from the supply, putting an inline fuse in here to the other one. The loop then goes to the brake light switch, which is down, way down behind there in the engine bay, behind the end of the radiator cowl, and that will cover us for ignition, turn off lights, and the brake lights. So fuse wise, you might want to put the brakes on while the ignition's running. I would say 15 amps for that. Let's go and get that noted up. Oh dear, getting a bit cold. So X7 ignition, stop lights, 15 amp. To be able to get that wire there. X7. Now we stand back and look what we've hit in this small amount of time. We've actually provided a lot more protection than your car actually needs. You could do it very, very simply by going to the back of the car and fitting one fuse in here for the whole car, which will supply everything after your ignition switch. That is realistically, that would be a simplest form of protection. It's very, very easy to do. I'll actually do that one when we go to part 3, and then I'll go and do the rest. So part 3 will be when we actually add everything in, which means binnacle out, or at least tilted forward to be able to get to some of these other ones. But when you see the fuses going in, we're going to end up with one here, 3 in the corner, one here, 2 in here, one there, one that side, and one in here. Now the one thing this doesn't have in it is it doesn't actually have a blower motor for the heater. Most cars will actually have that, so we'll add another fuse in here if need be for the supply to the motor blower, which in this car we don't have. So like me, be looking forward to part 3 and actually getting things done. When we actually get to part 3, we'll also be using this little tool. Now what this allows us to do is any of these fuse holders that will be fitted, we'll be able to pop it off, set the test probe, which is exactly the same as the fuse itself, like so, turn on the peripherals on the car, and we'll actually be able to read the current that's actually being drawn, the real world current. So we can then pick an appropriate next size up fuse, allowing for cold, hot, things like that. But especially you'll see the difference if you go to the wiper motor and you sit and watch it and you put a load in it just with your hand. You see the current come up quite a bit, so you really need to think when you do your fuse rating, not to make it too high, but to make it conservative in case it's a dry screen and so on. So I'll get wrapped up for the evening now, and then at some point we'll be rolling on to part 3.